The novel that I was working on when I met Tom, I thought was a good story, but after I found out, what Tom had been through in his young life, I thought, oh God, this is a way better story. And we met up in Chicago. He said, you still want to do a book? And I said, yeah, but I'd rather do a novel and have the protagonist based on your experiences. And he said, perfect. Mm-hmm. I'd rather do that too.
Some experts chase attention, but the smart ones build authority. You're listening to the Authority on Demand podcast, where credibility becomes your competitive advantage. Every week, we're pulling back the curtain on how founders and leaders turn expertise into inbound demand through books that position, media that converse, and strategies that actually move the needle. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authority on Demand. Now, let's turn your authority into leverage. Okay, so picture this. A Navy SEAL breacher with a MMA record walks into a Northwestern university and asks you to try out for football. Kind of sounds like fiction, but it did happen, and just the beginning of one of the most fascinating author partnerships I've encountered. Today we're talking with Tom Hruby, who lived that impossible story, and James Pomerantz, the Chicago novelist who spent years in the nightclub business before helping transform Tom's experiences into the Breacher's Playbook. So these two have created something that transcends typical military fiction. It's all about the psychological landscape of what happens when a warrior's mission goes from protecting his brothers to protecting society's most vulnerable. So let's dive in. Tom and James, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you. For having
Nice
us.
to meet you.
Hey, real quick before we jump back in, if you're loving what we're doing here, hit that subscribe button and drop us a like. We're bringing you the best authors, the most real conversations, and all the writing wisdom that you didn't know you needed. So stick around, because it only gets better from here. All right, now let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you both on. And to our listeners today, it's just really cool to have a collaborative podcast. We're speaking to you from 3 different places around the world right now, so it's really exciting. But yeah, let's get into it. Tell us more about what led to this partnership. How did you come to be? I gave a little intro before, but what happened? What led to this collaboration?
Tom?
Well, about 10 years ago, I was playing football at Northwestern University in Chicago, Evanston. And in walks this guy down here, James Pomerantz. He was working on another project, and one of the characters was an older guy that was playing football. So Coach Fitzgerald introduced the two of us and asked if I was willing to talk to James. James and Coach Fitzgerald are buddies. I was kind of on my way out of my Navy career, working my way out, and was finishing up my schooling, and I thought I really wanted to play football. And so at 32, I decided I'd give that a try and made the team at Northwestern. And then James and I began collaborating on a few projects. And James was just he's a seasoned writer and novelist and biographer, and he was persistent over the years. And he was persistent over the years, and it gave us time to develop the story and the project kind of the way that we decided that we were going to do it. So that's pretty much how it looked. I was not necessarily a writer. I've done plenty of journaling and writing. I didn't have anything published. So James was the professional on that, and he was the lead. He put the story and the ideas, all kind of brought them together, and then stayed persistent for quite some time until we finally were able to put this one together.
Right. Well, I love that story. And I think of course, the part that stands out to me is how persistent you were, James, over the years. I'm curious to know, when we first approached you about this story, what made you realize that this wasn't just another military memoir, but something bigger?
Well, I approached him first. The book that I was working on, the novel that I was working on when I met Tom, I thought was a good story. But after I found out, what Tom had been through in his young life, I thought, oh God, this is a way better story. And I approached him about doing a biography in 2015, I would say. And he wasn't ready to do a book. So we did stay in touch. Tom has a couple places in Crown Point, Indiana, and one of them is about a ranch with 60 acres, and he has a shooting range down there. So I was lucky enough to be able to go down there every once in a while and have a Navy SEAL give me some shooting lessons. And then over the years, I ended up moving to Arizona, and we met up in Chicago a couple summers ago, and he said, "You still want to do a book?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'd rather do a novel and have the protagonist based on your experiences." And he said, "Perfect.
Mhm.
I'd rather do that too." And a novel it's just a lot more creative, and it's a lot more fun to write. Not that writing Tom's story would have been boring, but
Well, so it's interesting, for a podcast about authors and writing. I mean, what is it about fiction versus nonfiction that made you lead that way? I mean, of course, it might be more exciting, but was there any other factors involved that made you think this one would just be resonate more with audiences? Or
well, as an author, it's just way more fun to write
fun?
fiction. And
Okay.
I mean, I wish I had a more complicated answer, but that's it.
You had fun with it, but at the end of the day, that's what writing's supposed to be, right? Just something you're passionate about and have fun with. So,
The
okay, I
more
love
fun a writer has working on a book, the more fun the reader's going to have.
absolutely. And I can see exactly how it resonates into the book. So let's, transition into the book itself again. You have a pretty intense character, and I guess I'm curious to know how much Delkin actually is based on Tom, right? I mean, he's described as a man that is, quote, hard, fast, and mean as razor wire. So, how much of that was, integrated into the book?
Declan is Tom. You know that he um, we fictionalize the settings, and the last third of the book where he's an FBI agent was fictionalized, but the personality and the determination and the skill sets, it's Tom.
Understood. And well, and how did you capture him so well? I mean, and Tom too, if you want to give us some information about this. I mean, how well do you think you were incorporated into that? I'm kind of imagining, you mentioned like some shooting lessons. Do you think these all came just like your authentic experiences, together is how you captured his voice, or did you have like an interview process that you used as you wrote the book? I guess process wise, I'm curious to know how you made this happen with integrating his character into it.
You or me, Tom?
Well, I just wanted to comment on, he came down and he got some shooting lessons from me, but I got about 400 hours of writing lessons from him. So it was I think it was a pretty good trade off. We spent a ton of time in an interview. So we started out just interviewing, maybe 40 hours or so of just sitting and talking, recorded interviews, asking questions. I mean, he just really wanted to understand, I think, how my mind and decision making process worked.
Mm.
And from there was the character just he'd send some stuff over and I'd look over it and we'd edit it and decide how Declan might behave or respond to some scenario. And I think it wasn't it wasn't after too many chapters that when we'd write something or have something, the character was pretty much exactly how we wanted it to be. He had a pretty good beat on exactly what Deklan Novak would do in all of these scenarios. So it wasn't all that hard to do.
Right. Okay. So I love that. And I also love the metaphor of like, he taught me writing lessons, I taught him shooting lessons, and kind of just going back to that too. Process wise, great. It's great that it worked out that way. I'm just thinking like metaphorically. I mean, like when you're writing a book, in a way, you kind of use the same skills as shooting a gun, right? You got to aim, you got to be precise. There's a matter of skill involved. So, I don't know, just the writer's mind, myself thinking how that's kind of just a funny trade. Um, so yeah, I mean, let's talk more about that writing aspect. I mean, it's planned as a 3-book series. Um, how much of it's plotted out already?
More than you'd think.
Yeah.
Um, but the process, of where Deklan is going in the second book is super cool. And, there's a lot of pieces to the business of writing that has to be taken care of before we show anybody a second manuscript. And, there was a few hiccups bringing out the first book, and that's not going to happen with the second book.
Understood. So hiccups, I'm curious, maybe that's something our audience can learn from, what the challenges that you faced. Like for example, did you ever disagree about how to portray a certain scene or, get a certain message across? What were those biggest challenges you overcame?
Well, the hiccups that I was talking about were not between me and Tom.
Oh, like publishing wise, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and every author goes through that. I don't think we're unique to that. The experience of writing with Tom was great. I mean, it was the first book that I wrote with a co-author, and I was kind of nervous about how it was going to go, and it was great. I started out with an outline, and then Tom would give me, 3,000 words on his first week at Buds or his first experience in combat. And, these kind of assignments turned into chapters. And then I'd send them back to Tom, and then he'd edit them. And, I'd go, wow, yeah, awesome, great. And, it was fun.
Right. No, I love that. Okay, so that's kind of how it works then. Just like he would send you some words, you would integrate it and kind of like just go back and forth in that regard. Okay, I like that.
I
Um,
mean, a lot of it I'd put directly into the chapter. Some of it I'd, you know, adapt, and other pieces that Tom sent were basically quoted in the book.
Understood. So that's awesome to hear that a lot of it just kind of went so naturally. And that just goes to show the collaboration you two have and how it's a team. You guys like definitely have a team mentality going there. Um, so amazing stuff. I'm curious to know then, you've written this book and, you have some others in the process, but aside from all this writing, what else can people be like on the lookout for in your endeavors? I mean, for example, Tommy, you're not still playing football?
No.
So where can people like kind of look up for like other endeavors that you've been working on?
You can look social media, Instagram, Facebook. Um, I have a website, tomrubyseal.com. James has a website. He's got a social media accounts. I think that's probably a pretty good way you could get started. I started a alternative school, a nature-based Socratic method school. We're spending most of our time outside. We just got done at Lincoln Park Zoo for a field trip today. I coach a bunch of sports, coach my kids, got a ranch and a property that we spend a lot of time on too. So
I like that you have that's just that school thing kind of, caught my eye there. You mentioned that you own a alternative learning type school. They learn outside and it's nature based. So based on that theory, would you say like nature helps like the writing process or the reading process? I'm sure all of your students perhaps, practice those skills outdoors with your school.
sure, sure. Yeah, nature's a brilliant piece of the creative puzzle for sure. In fact, I mean, being outside and finding a piece of nature is probably one of my favorite places to go if I'm looking for writing creativity, really any sort of creativity, any insight. I love to go to the mountains, spend time in the forest, amongst the trees. There's always just such brilliant insight to be found. And so our kids, they're allowed to take and choose and pick and kind of work any endeavor, project, any creative project that they feel like they want to try. We support that, and we try to guide them, scaffold along, and make sure that they're fully engaged in any thought process that they want to engage themselves in. And I think that that might be the most fundamental aspect of true, as close to unique creativity as we can come up with, is we got to allow someone's mind to go wherever it feels like it needs to go.
Understood. Yeah. I mean, I like that you said that, especially because it ties back to what I believe it was James that was talking to me in the beginning about how you just went with the fiction version of the book because that's what you're passionate about. That's what you enjoy doing. So it was a choice, just like your students make the choice of what they learn about, you make the choice of what you write about, and that just makes the quality so much better for something you're invested in and you're passionate about. So I like that.
I think the school that Tom started is really the future of education in this country, and he is way ahead of his time. And the people involved with this school, I think all aspects of the educational system are being questioned now, and
Mm.
Tom and the people in northern Indiana are ahead of the pack with this one.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely making a difference because when children are engaged with what they're doing, they learn it so much quicker. I mean, I'm a teacher as well, so I know what it's like. The kids know how to use a smartphone, but they can't hold their pencils, right? But almost because they're engaged in the smartphone, right? So if they got to learn and get engaged with something else, they learn it more quickly. But to kind of transition a little bit back then, I mean, we heard Tom's big writing advice: go outside, get some inspiration. What's your biggest piece of advice you would give to aspiring authors for James?
Good question. Do it. So
Mhm.
many people think about it, writing, and they think about an idea, and they think about, oh, I've got the great American novel in my head, and they don't start. Starting is intimidating. To somebody, um, you know, writing a book. Where do I start? How do I start? Well, it's easy, you know,
No
and
excuse.
don't be afraid to put ideas down. I mean, I write notes about things all the time on my phone, on paper, wherever I'm at. I circle things in a book if I'm reading it that I particularly like. And originality is almost impossible nowadays with so many billions of people in the world. So a guy I knew who was a world champion bull rider years ago told, I said, how do you get to be the best in the world at what you do? And he said, well, I studied the best. And then I just copied everything they did. It worked.
Hey, why not, right? I mean, learn
Yeah.
others. That's how we all do it, right?
Copy the practice, copy the
Mhm.
ethic, the work ethic, the determination, style, whatever you want.
Exactly. I like that. I mean, that's a beautiful piece of advice. There's no harm in looking to others for advice, for seeking out. It doesn't have to be all on your own. It's a team effort.
Mhm.
So amazing stuff. It's been a true pleasure meeting both of you guys. I think it's incredible what you've done here. A very inspiring novel for everyone to pick up. Very exciting too. I mean, to everybody listening today, this book basically combines like Friday Night Lights with like your favorite war movie, American Sniper, right? So it's something to check out. We're going to put all of the links in the description box of this podcast today, so you can click on those links and get connected with Tom and James, and be on the lookout for perhaps the rest of the series to come. I'm wondering if you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap up today. Anything our listeners can take with them as they go on with their days. What do you think?
Well, Tom, you've got a copy of the Breacher's Playbook with you. I didn't.
Oh, I would love to give a spotlight to that. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, let's
Let me see. Do I have a cut? Oh, here we go. Here we go.
I love it. How did that cover art come to be?
Beautiful cover.
Very passionate. I'm guessing somebody designed it on your behalf?
It was our publisher, Tactical 16. That was very first edit. Came exactly like that.
Wow.
Pretty
yeah.
amazing.
Well, that just goes to show they really knew the vision for the book.
Yes, they did. They did a great job.
I like that. So to everybody listening today, I mean, that's the image. It's definitely very striking. And I can see how when you see that, people want to know what that book's about and learn a little bit more. Something for everyone to learn too. You know, cover design is important. It helps you get the message across and find the audience. So yeah, thank you again. We're going to put the links in the description box of this podcast today, everybody. And until next time, just remember to keep writing your mission into reality. We'll see you next time on the Authors on Mission podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Authority on Demand podcast. If today's conversation sparked something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with a founder or leader who's ready to stop being the best kept secret in their industry. If you want to turn your expertise into inbound demand, head to authorityondemand.com to see how we help clients go from unknown to in demand. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, and I'll catch you on the next one. Now, go build some authority.